good to go.
Well, I'm not good.
You're on the podcast with Dino and Ashley.
We're going to do our Q&A today. I asked on my Instagram. We got a lot of questions. So maybe you have to break this into a couple sections.
Maybe not.
Maybe. We'll see if we can just like fire answer them.
Sure, let's give it a rip.
Obviously, these are personal opinions.
Disclaimer, follow none of this.
Yeah.
Do not do anything that we say. I feel like that. No, that's good, Cameron. No, that needs to be straightened out. That doesn't feel right.
But I did want to share too. I did my speaking engagement over the weekend. It was lovely. It was very good. I felt such a peace about it going into it. Normally, I feel like I would feel like nervous or even shaky when I was giving it. And I just didn't at all. It was so cool to just have this peace that came over me. I knew I was doing something that the Lord had placed in front of me. He had placed the words in front of me, and I presented it in a way that felt like he was with me also, which was really cool. Now, could I sit there and pick myself apart afterwards and be like, oh, okay, well, you could do this better and this better and this better? Yeah, I definitely want to do it more and grow, and it could have been better, but I was very, very happy that I did it.
Yeah, it's actually cool to watch you because in my mind, I'm like, man, she's going to get nervous. But then it was funny. I watched this video of this reporter talking to a bunch of athletes before they went into the Olympics. And they would ask them, oh, are you nervous? Are you nervous? And the athletes, like 99% of the time said, no, I'm not nervous. I'm excited. And they started to unpack it. And what they found is that if you're really well prepared for something and you have a certain level of confidence in what you're capable of doing, then the same feelings and emotions associated with going into that of fear and worry get translated to excitement. So they can actually be used. Like they're
That's
intended.
what I felt, was excited.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Because basically I'm an Olympian.
That's exactly.
So
exactly.
I don't
You're an
really
athlete.
see the difference. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Let's move on. All right. So we got a couple of questions here. Wait, we got a lot of questions. I figured we'll just we're gonna kind of go back and forth. I'll pick some, and then Dino will pick some.
Let's do it.
We'll see how many we can get through.
Okay.
All right. Let's start with this one. Can you go into depth how you dream together? And this is one that we've actually done a podcast on before.
Yep.
And so we've kind of gone into this.
Yep. You can always go back and look at that part, listen to the podcast.
Yeah, but you want to do a quick recap of it?
Yeah. I think that the key to you and I starting to dream together is ensuring that we have very low barriers between one another, right? Like you want to make sure that there's no arguments between you and I, no tension, no issues, no sin, right? Because the barriers that are between you and I inhibit our ability to be able to navigate,
and be completely vulnerable together.
Exactly.
Because that's the point, is you need to be like stripped down, vulnerable, so you can say whatever, and the other person is like, I hear you.
Thank you.
And you're not a crazy person. And
you're not dragging all that baggage of those other things into that kind of conversation.
How can we do this when you do this?
So you want to start off with where you're can be very vulnerable. And that means that all the baggage is gone. And you're both agreeing to go into this state of, hey, we're going to give each other freedom to say things and talk about things that are maybe a little scary or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then once you're in that state, Ash and I, what we do is we try and get alone together where there's nobody else. And it needs to be a couple of days, especially I have found for her. She needs 24 hours of detox of all the things for her to really get into a mental state of, hey, I'm now chill, right? Because a lot of times you're just spun up from all the things that are going on. Then once that's taken place, then you and I basically have quiet together first. We'll go and we spend the morning, like when you and I are, I'm just thinking of Tulum, when we've gone there and you and I spend a lot of time dreaming there. What we've done is we spend the morning praying together, drinking coffee together, setting the tone. Yeah, going for a walk, setting the tone for the day where it's like, hey, you and I are trying to get very close together here. And then from there, we just start kind of talking about some of the things that each one of us.
And you're talking about an extreme circumstance where we're like going somewhere and doing this. This can be done at home also, like on a walk, in a bath. Like have given lots of examples of things you can do at home that are free, that just is separating the two of you so that you have time to be vulnerable, clear-headed, and you can communicate.
It doesn't have to be heavy though, to be honest. Like aspects of it could be, but it doesn't have to be heavy. It should be fun and exciting. And a lot of times that's hard for one of the spouses. It can be where one of them have issues with, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to get my mind into anything other than what it is that I'm doing right now. They're just, people have a tendency to think rigidly.
There are certain like marriages and couples that have heavy things in their marriage that they have to deal with and have to get through to be able to go past that.
Yes. And I highly encourage, go through the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Have the fight. Don't avoid it. Don't walk around it and neglect it. Just have the fight, because it's so much better to move through something than to have it there nagging all the time.
Yes. So. Okay, I'll do the next one here. Best part about raising teenagers. Give me some hope.
We're in the thick of it though right now.
For sure. I have found that with teenagers, the talking, there's so much talking. And I think we've talked about this before on here. Yeah. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of re-talking, and each of the kids are so different, and there is not one formula for all of them. The only formula that fits all of them is that we're trying to point all of them to Christ.
Amen.
But in how we do it, it's different for each one. Their punishments are completely different. Fairness doesn't equal love. We say that to them often because they're like, well, why does Gavin get this and I get this? And it's like, this punishment would not affect you at all. You wouldn't care about this. Yeah. This affects you. And what we're trying to do is make the sting of we want your sin to be greater than the satisfaction of you doing the sin. We need the sting of that to be greater. Have the conversations with teenagers as much as you can. Have that interaction with them, the back and forth. The goal is to try to tie like heartstrings to them so that they want to come talk with you. So they want to confess things. They want to like making a space so they can do that.
You can do things in two different ways. Legalism, where you're like, this is the rules, you have to follow the rules, and that's
how I was raised.
Yeah, and we've watched the fruit of that, and that's not necessarily the direction we want to go, where it's Ash and I as parents, it's our responsibility to just create all the rules and the structure of how the home's supposed to be run, and we're the government, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other way is highly relational, which is what we do, where we try and understand the needs of each one of the kids, like you had said, and we give them what they need when they need it. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to be able to push them as hard as you possibly can without breaking them. And you don't want to give them things before they can handle them, right? So we just give the kids as much as they can handle as they're going through phases. But in terms of giving you hope, I have loved a large amount of the phase that all the kids are in, this teenage phase right now. And I feel like they're becoming, obviously we're still parents with them, but there's a huge aspect of it where you and I get to have friends.
Yeah.
Like I go to the gym every morning. That to me is
some of the fruit that we get to see now after, I mean, we still put the time in, especially, I feel like now more than ever, it's just different labor, you know?
Yeah.
But there was just years of with Gabe specifically, I didn't know what was going to happen with that kid, like I just didn't know which direction he was going to go.
Yeah.
And then God grabbed a hold of his heart and equipped us to be able to figure him out. And, he's totally changed.
Yeah. I use the analogy of the gym with them, and hopefully this gives you hope. When I first started training the boys in the gym, it was so brutally difficult. It was so exhausting trying to...
And it would have been easier to do it without them.
Oh, absolutely.
Not
absolutely. It'd be so delightful to go to the gym where it's just you and me and I can chill.
They were definitely pulling us down.
And that translates into life too. I could basically ignore them, create a structure and be like, here, you're well fed and do nothing. But I invite them into life, and I invite them into the aspects of the gym, and I train them in the gym and I teach them. And for months, if not a year, I mean, Gabe's been going almost 2 years. Gav's been a year and change now. And it was so long of me pushing them and training them and guiding and molding and fixing and correcting. And then eventually it kind of settled. And now I just got done a shoulder session with them, and we all had headphones in the whole time. I said not one word to them, but I give them cues the whole time. Chin up, right? I'll put my finger under my chin to give them a cue to have chin up and shoulders, big chest, or I'll correct one little aspect of them, or I'll tap them in a spot. And that's that's a perfect analogy for life. The goal is to make it so you're so close with them. You've done life with them. You've pushed them through all of the things that they're going through so that you don't have to do as much like parenting. It's just a bump.
Yeah.
It's a cue, right? And then they're back into the phase of where they're supposed to be in, you know?
Yep.
Leaning into sexuality with partner, how to do that without it feeling like it's sinful.
I think that's an interesting question. Well, I'm gonna let you answer it. But
no. I'm gonna. This is a woman. I would love to hear a woman's perspective.
Well, I think that you'll have like a really deep theological, answer for it. But I get this question for sure because I remember years ago do you remember when 50 Shades of Grey came out, that movie and book or whatever it was? And I had a girlfriend that was married, and we didn't really talk about stuff like that, like sex or anything, but it came up in a conversation, and I've always been open to talk about whatever,
Yeah.
And she was like, I just don't know. Like, I grew up in a way that as a Christian, sex was bad. And so it was bad. You don't do it. You don't do it. You don't do it. And then you get married, and then you're supposed to see it as some good thing. And how am I supposed to flip that switch? It's been really hard for me because I'm married to somebody that I love, but like, I still see sex as this bad thing. She's like, maybe I should go and read, like 50 Shades of Grey, and like, so I can learn stuff. And I was like, no, don't do that. That's the wrong thing, but that we should be able to talk about sex in a safe way as Christian, believers and couples and stuff like that. So I just thought that was an interesting thing, that I understand that this is a topic that is very fragile,
Of course.
And
nuanced.
Yes. And nuanced. Yeah. And that some women were raised that way, and they see sex as like a sin still.
Yeah.
Or that they see it as a bad thing.
Yeah. Which I actually think is a tool of the enemy. It's a tool of the devil.
Absolutely.
Because God created sex. God was the one who has a design for it and a structure for it. But then the world and Satan takes it and bastardizes it, and they just mutates it and makes what God created for awesome, amazing gifts, and then destroys it and corrupts it. So there's two ends of the spectrum. There's 50 Shades of Grey, which manipulates something that's beautiful and God-given. And then there's the other side of it that says, wow, you should be ashamed of yourself and not touch each other at all. And especially for women, you have to make sure that you're very buttoned up, and then men also, you have to shut all sexuality off completely.
Yeah, well, that's what the world says.
Yeah, even inside Christian culture, a lot of times it tells men they need to shut their sexuality off entirely.
Yeah.
But God has a different design. You are my outlet. You are the only thing that I look at visually. You're the only thing that I have a sexual outlet on, and that is by design. And that if you follow that pattern, man, things go really, really, really well for you. You're my only outlet, and I am to lust after you and only you, and you are the definition of beauty. And then on the girl's side, you could easily go to either end of that spectrum as well and say, hey, this is wrong and frigid, and then miss out on all the amazing gifts that you potentially have between you and your husband in your marriage, because there are such amazing gifts in that aspect of your marriage,
For sure.
I've never wanted from you.
Yeah.
You've always been open to the idea of, hey, this is an area, especially because sex in general is probably more important to the guy than the girl most of the time, I'd say. And you've done such an amazing job in our marriage of always keeping me well fed and engaging with me in the areas that I find important and I find fun with you and I, and then feeding me and understanding me and the sexuality that I have, and knowing that if you're my only outlet, then, hey, let's make sure that my head is not I'm well fed and my head isn't being turned in another direction, and I'm able to have fun and connect with you on that level. Yeah. You've done such an amazing job, and I would love for you to
Well, this is a really hard topic because I feel like I could, it's so layered, Yeah. I'm able to be like that though, because of how you are to me. Yeah. And because I feel safe, and because I feel loved, and because I feel served. And so the more that our marriage has become that, it's like that upward spiral again, because somebody did something first, whether it was me or it was you or both of us, we both decided to make a decision that this was the path we wanted to go down. In turn, it has created just more of that, because the more I feel loved and served and comfortable, then I can feel vulnerable and I can feel sexy and I can be naked. Like it takes everything deeper sexually because it's deeper emotionally like that depth of intimacy. That's the depth of intimacy there. So then I have a desire to also do that for you, because you are feeding me so much, also. So that's why it's it's so hard to just do one side of it, because I can't speak. If I didn't have you doing that, I don't know how I would be.
And you say doing that, you mean by me basically tending your garden, like, because the way I kind of envision this is that there's a wall. You're gonna steal this analogy, I'm sure of it, or that, or you're gonna make fun of it. Either one.
It just sounds like there's something like you'd say to kids, or
there's a wall. This is the way I kind of look at this. There's a wall between you and me. We live in the same area. I live on one side in a garden, and you tend the garden, and I have to live in it. And vice versa. I take care of your side of things, and you have to live in it, right? So the way I look at it is like, I want to always make sure that because there's certain things that in our marriage, I can only do for you. And there's certain things that you can only do for me. And the idea is that we just are in this state of constantly trying to take care of one another. I want to make sure I'm constantly ensuring that you're living in a state that where the things I can control in our world together you're very well satisfied. I'm thinking about it and being mentally intentional about, hey, let me put her in the best possible scenario. I want her to wake up and feel amazing about the world she kind of gets to live in, And if you and I both have that mentality, which I've constantly seen that same type of thinking from you as well, things go really, really well, right? And to your point, that's where you get that upward spiral where you and I both share this mentality of how can I make things better for my spouse? What do they need? What do they want? And how do I fulfill that? How do I go and be there for them for what they need?
Yeah. And I would encourage you I'm saying that, for us, well, not just for us, but for the couple, you really need both people to be engaged in that. But I encourage you to not wait for your spouse. You can start that movement. You can start down that path. You can be the leader in that. Also, I was thinking about you and I years ago started having sex just more frequently because of like a
bed or some goof thing we were doing with Greg.
And then because of that, it actually did make me feel more connected to you in that way. It wasn't like it was like I was feeling used or anything like that. Like we both agreed on it. It was something fun for us. We were just being playful, and we like doing that. We like being playful with each other. And I think it's important this should not feel like a sin. This should feel fun. This is what God created sex for. It was for us. With inside your marriage, that you can have fun. You can do all the things. It's for you and your spouse alone to do those things. But I still feel like there was, and I don't know if it was, hormones with having Foxy and all, we definitely hit a bumpy road after I had Fox, and I had a really hard time. We both had a hard time. Dino had a hard time because we were so aligned on so many things, having so much fun together. Well, then we got another player in the game, and that player took a lot of my attention from Dino. And so you had to navigate that. And then I had another focus now, and my hormones were definitely, out of all the kids, my hormones went the wildest after Fox, just off. My focus and my priorities were all over the place. While I still loved Dino and I wanted to take care of him and, satisfy him, I just wasn't I was just cloudy, I guess, I guess is the word, But I also feel like because of that cloudiness, Satan also came in and started using that against me and started messing with my mind even more and making it feel like Dino doesn't really love you. He's just and he'd tell me little lies about the things, like our sex life, basically, because that was probably the number one thing we were arguing about during that time.
Yep.
And I struggled with it so much because I was like, I want to be like this. Like I know what I really want, but I can't get there. And it's making me feel like I was basically creating you like as a villain, like as what you were wanting was a negative thing. And it was so from Satan. And it was also just, he was using my clouded mind to mess with my mind, And I don't even know what happened. I'm telling you, this was years of us going back and forth.
It was, yeah.
And just not being able to get there on the same page. And I know so many men and women, but women specifically, after you have kids and your hormones, you're just not in it. You're not feeling it. Yeah. But you have a desire, like, I want to be. I'm like, Lord, I want to be on the same level as Dino. I would love to be like wild and crazy with him and like all this stuff. And I just was like allowing Satan to like give me all these little lies. And I don't know what happened. There was one morning, I think you and I were maybe in a fight or something. And I got up and I started just reading different things online, like biblically. I was reading my Bible and then reading different articles from Christian authors or, websites that were talking about sex and marriage. And I cannot tell you what I read and where it was from, but I read something and it was like a flip switched in my head. And I just like repented and cried in the family room and asked God just for forgiveness for I was allowing Satan to have like a stronghold in my life in this area. And it was like a veil was lifted and I was able to see Dino more clearly, and then able to just really continue to pray and say what I said before, like, I want to be what I can be for Dino. I want to be, that fun person. I want to be wild. I want to have the same desires. Like, obviously I'm never going to be like at a man's level, but like, give me that lust for him. Give me that desire for him. Like, I want to have fun with him. And how long ago was that? You think like a year?
A year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like since then, everything has changed.
Absolutely. It's tough. This is such a hard area.
It is really a hard area. And I have to say too, I know the Lord like transformed my heart too, but I think that there's decisions we can make. I was just actually writing about this in From Ashley this morning. There's decisions we can make in our lives that do make these things a little bit easier too. Just like general health decisions. So there's, making sure you have enough sleep, making sure you're eating correctly. Are you taking care of your body? Like, these affect your mind and the way you process things and your thoughts. And there's an overflow there. And do I want that overflow to be positive or do I want it to be negative? And so, really making sure that I am being aware of my body and like what I can do to also help me down this path so that I'm at the optimal health level so that I can think clearly.
Yeah. You and I have been married 18 years. And where we're at now is very different than where we were at year one. And it is not an instantaneous thing. Mm-hmm. It takes years and years and years of building trust with one another, building and being playful with one another, dabbling with like very small incremental change in that area. But I feel like if you say mentally, this is an area that I want, and I feel like every Christian relationship should have this. Every single one. They should say, this is a gift by God, and we're deserving of the best version of this gift.
Amen.
The world mutates it into something that is a bastardized version of what God's design is for it. Therefore, I'm going to throw away that garbage, and I'm going to focus on the fact that if this is supposed to be something that's best inside of a Christian marriage, then let's take that at face value and say, all right, now I'm going to actually start to dabble in it more and more and more with my husband.
And don't wait until your kids are older and out of the house to start, going down this path. Like, this is a journey to start immediately, right when you get married.
Yeah.
Before kids, during kids,
Yep.
after kids. It's going to build up a foundation so that when your kids leave, this is so solid.
Yeah.
Like, I can't wait to just hang out, the two of us alone.
Yep.
You know?
And one other thing from the guy side, like, I actually didn't have a crazy high sex drive for many, many years, probably till about the age 35, 36. And it wasn't around my physiological like drive. It was purely a mental and spiritual thing for me. I went to God and said, Father, I don't necessarily have this isn't an area that's overly important to me. I want to passionately lust after my wife. I want to be excited about her. I want to be constantly sexually aroused by her and only her. So light that up fire in me and just make me so insanely like lustful after her that I want her all the time. And then as I constantly prayed that, I started to say, well, what actions do I need to take to make it so that I can cultivate this? And I firmly believe that that is the word, cultivate. You have to cultivate a sexual relationship for your spouse. And it's both sides. The guy needs to put effort and energy into building that desire for his spouse. And the best way, men, to do this is to serve the crap out of your wife. You value what you invest in. And if you want to value your spouse and you want to be able to be very sexually attracted to them and only them, cut out all the other crap in your life and only have eyes for your wife, number one. And number two, the biggest one here, you're intentionally serving them. Because if you're investing in that, I'm constantly investing and serving you, then there's this anticipation and excitement and investment that I have in this because I've put so much into this. I expect something, not expect something out of it, not in that sense, but I'm expectant of what God's going to do when you're in my relationship. I'm expectant and excited about the depth that you and I get to have. And that just builds for me this like insatiable desire for you. I need you. I want you badly because I've constantly fed into this, you know?
And then who doesn't want that to feel just desired? And lusted after, like by their husband.
This is God's design.
Yeah.
This is how God's designed it. If you do things the way that God wants, it is this amazing upward cycle. So we kind of went on a tangent.
And well, this overflows into another question that I saw, and then we probably have to wrap it up because we have to take the kids to school. How do you deal with jealousy? And good question. Okay, so somebody asked, how do you feel about jealousy when, you know, other girls are flirting with your husband or whatever? But this is the second part to that. I don't feel jealous because Dino's eyes, his desire and what he's cultivated is that I am number one and I am the most beautiful and I have the best body and I have the best work. Like, so there's other girls and I'm like, oh, I can say to even Dino, like, oh, that girl's a beautiful girl, you know? Like it doesn't matter. I'm not even fazed by it because he has never made me feel like there is anybody else out there in the world at all. So,
which, side note, that should be how it is in a marriage. Both the wife and the husband should always encourage their spouse. They should never give their spouse any other signal other than it's just you.
Yeah.
My eyes are yours. I only want to have eyes for you. I only want to be looking at you.
Yes.
I only want to ever allow myself to be excited, aroused, thinking and meditating on you.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Other things are just, they dilute the purity of the high that I get from just you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And this goes back to the thoughts, produce your words, produce your actions. Like, hold your thoughts captive. Mm-hmm. What are the things you want to be thinking about? Like, where do you want to be at in your marriage? Do you want what we're talking about right now? Well, then your only thoughts should be for your husband. Your words should be positive. Everything that you're thinking, even in your head and your mind only thinks of, that's a hot guy. That's my man. That's my husband. I want to get on that.
Absolutely. What you just said is fire.
So you start there. That's how you start, is with your thoughts and then the words and the actions. So this all overflows into your sex life. This all overflows into you feeling security so that you don't feel jealous. So you got to do the work though. You got to put the time in and do the work.
That was absolute fire what you just said. That whole thing. Your thoughts become your words, become your actions. Abso-freaking-lutely. The way that if you want to have a good sex life with your spouse, which is an action, you have to talk to them correctly. And the only way you talk and speak to them correctly is by thinking about them in the right way. Don't ever pick up a sock off the floor and curse about your spouse. That type of mentality overflows into everything.
Yes.
If I'm grumbling and upset and thinking negatively about you, we're not going to have a good sex life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because think about that.
That's going to overflow when we're trying to be intimate with each other.
Exactly.
And it's like, oh, he's just driving me
He's
crazy.
so stupid.
Yeah.
He's so stupid. Why doesn't he do this thing?
Yeah.
You know, like don't allow your mind to think about your spouse in a negative light.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And absolutely never allow that to verbalize. That's why I never talk bad about you in front of somebody else, and definitely not to my buddies or my friends, or complain about you, because I don't want to allow my mind. I hold every thought captive.
Yeah.
I don't want to allow my mind to ever dwell on a negative aspect of you.
Yeah.
Of course, there are things about you that aren't perfect, but that's not what I allow my mind to dwell on. I only allow my mind to sit and play on the areas of you that I love and I adore, and the things I'm so thankful for in you.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more to be thankful for than I can nitpick and pick you apart on, you know?
I know. And then wouldn't you say then now, because of that and doing that for so many years and being so intentional about that, now those little things that could annoy us or gross us out, they're just funny, they're cute, or they're like, I love you even more. Like,
yeah, when I pick up a sock, I'm like, man, I love her. Yeah. I love you. Yeah. I love you. And that's, I use that as an example, but pick up the sock is anything that irritates you or could irritate you.
Yeah.
You know, a dish in the sink, it's like, I love you. I'm going to serve you in doing this.
Yeah.
You know, allow your mind to stay in a state of positivity when thinking and meditating and dwelling on your spouse.
Yeah.
You know, that, man, does that ever have a crazy overflow? You want to have a really good sex life with your spouse, stay focused on the positives of your spouse, and then allow that to overflow. Say then the things you're thinking, the things you're constantly like, hey, when I was cleaning up the room this morning, I was picking up your stuff, and I was thinking all these amazing things about you, and it made me just so thankful for the things you do for me. You provide for me, and you take care of me. You cook for me, or whatever you know?
Yeah.
And I love you for that.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for you. Right? Like, think about that conversation in the light of all the things that happen in the day. There are a few negative, and you could go and allow those negative things to permeate the thread through the entire day.
Yeah.
Or you can allow the positive things that you're meditating on to permeate all the other aspects of the day. And the way I talk with you, the way that we're physical with each other, the way that our sex life then permeates from me staying focused on you. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that doesn't mean also that you don't have to talk about those things either. You know, I remember just the other day, I was feeling that there's so many things going on. And I was like, let's talk about the socks on the floor. It wasn't the socks though. It was like your underwear or something. And so it was starting like that. It's not like we're perfect and things like don't come into our heads. You know, we can feel irritated or, you know, about certain things. But if we allow it, like, do I want to get upset and have that build up resentment against Dino because his underwear's on the ground? No. And it's silly. And I love him so much and I'm happy to pick it up. But I also have had so many things on my plate and so many things that were causing me to feel like I was just working like so hard that picking up the underwear off the ground too was like another thing. And yes, I could serve him and be sacrificial in that, but that doesn't also mean that we can't lovingly communicate things too. Absolutely. And say, hey, like, hey, I love you so much. I'm feeling burdened right now with so many things.
Yeah.
And, you know, are you able to pick up your laundry? It would mean so much to me. It's really just, it's a lot right now. And it's like the extra thing on my plate right now that's making me feel heavy.
You felt like you had to go back and talk about this is
hypothetical. No, but I think it's important because I think what we're saying is really invaluable, and that's the focus. Totally. But then I also know that this thought is going to come up in people's head, and it's like, so I'm just supposed to let him have his bad behavior or let her do, and it's like, yeah, sure. But you can also lovingly talk about things, know the time, the place, the tone, and communicate and say, hey, what about this?
Yeah, I think scale of importance obviously is something important to look at and be like, is this? But my main thing is I want to encourage people, look for the opportunities on the things that aren't the big things that you need to have a conversation about, and use those as opportunities to just meditate on your spouse in a positive way.
I love it.
That's all I'm saying.
All right. I think we should end there because we don't have enough time. And that was that ended up being really long. Yeah. So
we had a couple there. I feel like we had a couple.
Yeah, I have so many more, and I actually really love going off of the questions. We are going to take a few weeks of a break for the holidays. So we're going to come back January 10th is our first one. Is it the first one? Yeah, January 10th. And then we are going to just be taking this time. I'm going to take off of social media. We're going to just really pray. We have some big life changes that are coming this next year that are in the works. And we'll see when we share it. And
when is there not a big life change going on in my life?
Well, this is a pretty big one. But we're going to take this next month just to really just come together, pray, dream, talk, make a plan, sort of thing. So the stuff that we're talking about that we share on the podcast, we do actually do those things. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to be intentional about it by setting aside time, shutting off things in the world that cause us to not be able to think clearly and communicate, that distract us. So that means shutting off social media. That means, taking time off the podcast, things that we think we need to, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to do this, and, check boxes and strive. And it's like, no, these are the times when we need to discipline ourselves to be quiet and allow God to work in us, show us what he wants us to be doing. And yeah, I'm excited to come back on afterwards and we'll share. And then I think we also continue to go through these questions. And if you have any more, please send them our way during this time.
Yeah, these are gold. I think they're just really good for you and I to be able to use as conversation starters.
Yeah. So. We've so loved doing the podcast these last 6 months and sharing on here. And even through that, God's just been so cool. How we started the podcast when I was off social media, and it was just really cool. Even how God had orchestrated all that. He had prompted me to take time and to stop striving and to get offline. And that was also the time that our podcast was launching. And during that time that I was off, he really showed me who the enemy was and what's a lie and what's the truth, who he is and who the enemy is. And we've had a lot of attack through the podcast on different platforms and stuff like that. And God's just totally lifted this weight off of me that I just feel almost empowered by it and so encouraged by the hate on the podcast that it's caused us to come together and just be even more excited about sharing. Yeah. Because for us, that means that God's working here and doing some amazing things through us. And if it's 20 people that are getting it, one person that's getting it, then we are so fired up and pumped. We are fired up and pumped and dedicate this to that one person, Yep. So we just want to be obedient to what he wants for us, and he has us down this path, and we're so thankful for it.
Yep. So yeah, we thank everybody for listening and being part of this. We're stoked that we get to just on a weekly basis be part of people's lives and feed into them. And I really love the fact that we get to do this. I highly encourage you to go out this Christmas season and use the time to be able to really go deep with your spouse, go play with the areas in your marriage that you haven't been playing in, invest more.
Have the most amazing Christmas and awesome New Year. And we will see you in the new year. January 10th, we'll be back on 9:00 and we'll have a fresh podcast for you.
There you go.
Okay.